Hi everyone, how are you doing today? I'm with a really special guest today, my boyfriend,
Joseph.
Joe.
Joseph. I don't like Joe.
Well, welcome, Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
It's an honour.
we're here to discuss a book we just finished reading together called Piranesi by Susanna Clarke.
Yeah.
This is a book that's more recently published. Why did we choose this?
So we read Confessions together. That was serious. And then I was reading a serious book and you were reading a serious book. And I was defending genre fiction, which you are not so keen on. And so we said we would read something light, we would read genre fiction, and you would pick one that you had heard of, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds right. And so I went on my Goodreads list and looked at all the genre fiction that I had, and it was mostly detective novels, which you're not.
No, they're not. I don't know. They suck.
So we ended up. I arrived at Piranesi because it was probably the only book that wasn't detective.
Yeah,
and
I like fantasy to some extent.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so
Well, and one of the reasons I had put this on the list originally is because I think people had compared it to C.S. Lewis and some of his more classic fantasy.
We like C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, moderately.
You said Until We Have Faces is like one of the best.
Yeah,
best books you've ever read.
We still need to read that one.
We like the highlights of Lewis.
Yeah. And there were people on Goodreads that I follow who really liked this novel, so it just seemed like a good choice, and it's not very long, and yeah. As far as like what it's about, so the Piranesi starts out with this solitary figure who lives in a mysterious house, a very large house, a mansion with many, many rooms, and the story is told in a series of journal entries as he kind of goes from room to room and visits statues and does his little rituals. But it's a very minimalist opening, and then starts to introduce more characters as it goes on. But I think we had kind of mixed feelings about the beginning, didn't we?
I just want to precursor by saying, as you already said, right, this book came out in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
It came out in the middle of the pandemic, and it's a book about loneliness. And before we say negative things, I think it struck a vibe. Yes. I think it struck a chord with many people who were lonely at the time. Which you were skeptical about this, but that's just my word of defense before we say anything bad about it.
I think you're right. Yeah, it was released in 2020 and
September 2020, I think.
Probably.
Yeah.
But either way, and this follows upon Susanna Clarke's other novel, John Strange and Mr. Norrell, which did really, really well. Much longer book, but this one feels a lot more condensed, I think.
I've not read the other one.
I haven't either, but I just know it's a chunkster. So
it might be more condensed.
Yeah. It stands to reason it's more condensed. So all right. So that's kind of what this book's about.
Are we doing the 5 things we like, 5 things we don't like?
All right. Yeah, let's start with the things we like. So,
because that way we limit the number of bad things we can say about the book.
If you haven't been able to tell yet, we really didn't end up liking this novel. So,
I think I liked some of it more than you did. All right. Okay. Fine. What's your first? Let's start on a positive note. What was the first thing you liked about it?
So I actually did enjoy the minimalist setting of Piranesi, especially at the beginning. I'm a big fan of Kafka, and Kafka does this thing where he doesn't bother to, build out these really complicated worlds. He just kind of puts this solitary character in a very eerie and confusing and kind of liminal setting. You like that?
Sorry, this is off topic, but do you think wombs are liminal spaces?
Wombs?
Wombs. Like, if have you ever seen Look Who's Talking?
No.
It's about a baby in the womb who can talk. And it's kind of like this. It's a protagonist who's in an isolated space, so they're in a liminal space.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to cut this section from your video because it's. Sorry, carry on.
I mean, I can see the liminalist.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this character is very childlike, so.
Wow. Do you think? Do you think it's like symbolic for pre-birth?
The house. Do you think the house is the womb here? Well, we can come back to that.
Okay. As you can tell, the word liminal spaces are like.
It's one of your favorites, isn't it?
No. Sorry.
That's why I had to bring it up.
Yeah, go on.
So that was my first thing I liked about it. I enjoy those kinds of settings. What was your first thing you liked about it?
I thought the original hook's pretty interesting. You didn't think the same, but I was quite enthralled by about a third of the way through. I was kind of interested in why the world existed, and there were spooky birds, and I like spooky birds, so it kind of had me. And I thought near the start there's kind of lots of things rolled into one, but the pace was progressing nicely, and initially it was drip feeding you just enough to keep you going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing I did enjoy about the book early on was, even though there are things about the writing style I didn't like, it does try to follow kind of that classic literature prose style. Like,
what do you mean?
It's clearly trying to emulate somebody like C.S. Lewis. Maybe not him exactly, but just
pastiche.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty decent pastiche.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I've read enough pastiche to know that she's done a pretty decent job. It's not flawless.
Is that your second positive point?
Yeah.
We're doing all the positives before you do all the negatives.
Oh, we don't have to, but
let's do 2 positives each and then 2 negatives. I like to. All right.
Let's do that.
My second positive. I've already said that I like birds, haven't I? I've only crossed that one off the list. Okay. I think it's kind of a brave concept. Like, I don't think it's maybe the most inventive, but like a lot of modern fantasy, it's pretty fast paced. It's pretty action packed. And they tends to follow like big cast of characters, like likable, charismatic characters. And compared to that, this is the opposite. It's about a single character in kind of a lonely world. It's not, the world isn't grand in scale. If anything, it's quite claustrophobic, and you're just in their head a lot, and it's quite a meditative book. So I thought, that was cool. That was promising. I like the premise of the book.
Yeah.
All right. So your first negative.
My first negative. Okay. This is gonna be my main negative.
Ooh.
Actually. So, Clarke, kind of takes some time building this very mystical world.
Yeah.
With the statues and the waves. There's these ocean waves that are rising and falling in the house. Very atmospheric, and just actually really does succeed in placing you in a really different headspace. I enjoyed that. But what I didn't like is that I think around halfway through the book, maybe even earlier, she starts to interweave this world with the real world and with this whole other plot line that involves detectives or cops or whatever.
It's dark academia more than anything, right?
Yeah. But that just jolted me out of this setting so badly that
the escapism was working on you until they shattered it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, in that case, my first negative is I wasn't super fan. I was enjoying the escapism before that was shattered, but I think it could have been salvaged, but I don't like the way they did it. So a lot of the stuff relating to the real world, I feel like we just did a major spoiler of the book, right?
That's
we
okay.
didn't spoiler.
We'll put in
spoiler tags, yeah, all right. But when they start weaving in the real world elements, it's delivered to us via basically the main character starts finding journal pages of their journal from earlier when they remember the real world. They find newspaper articles and stuff like that from the real world. And the way everything is delivered, whereas I thought before we'd have drip feeds of information, we suddenly get flooded by long bits of exposition written as very boring academic writing, and it was boring.
Yeah, it was very and repetitive.
Yeah, some of them would go on for like pages.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I don't know, emulating dry prose still is dry prose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my. What's your second negative?
I think it would be like the other main character here. So there's this, no pun intended. There's the antagonist is called the Other in this book.
Capital O.
Yeah, capital O, Other. And more is revealed later about who he actually is and why he's the antagonist and so on. But just, I really enjoyed reading him because
oh yeah, we read this to one another a fair amount. That was fun.
And the Other just speaks in this incredibly pretentious and weird dialogue.
He's the kind of person who you would you tell him see you tomorrow and he would say affirmative.
Yeah. And that's kind of cute for like a chapter or two, but as the novel goes on and begs you to take it somewhat seriously, it becomes more and more exasperating, and I just felt like the novel became increasingly twee as it went on. So
become twee?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it was. Alright, this is my second negative, which I guess it's kind of like that, but it was hammy. Yeah. So, for me, it was hammy. Like, Piranesi, the main character, is a bit of a himbo. And they just have ridiculous, silly conversations with the Other that just sounded unlike anything a real person would ever say. Like, you kind of wonder if Susanna Clarke has ever spoken to someone. Or, and it sounded like ChatGPT talking to ChatGPT, but there's kind of multiple points, I guess. But the thing became just very hammy, and yet it just took itself very seriously.
Oh yeah. If it had been more of a comedy, then that would have been okay.
Or even if it hadn't, like this book had really high aspirations and just didn't reach any of them.
Yeah, and I think that there's just extended passages about so and so investigating so and so and writing a book about so and so, and the way it's all kind of revealed is just very pretentious sounding.
Yeah. All right, your third positive.
My third positive. Do I have a third positive?
Well, shall I do my third positive first?
Yeah, go for it. I'll have to think for a minute.
I've already said that I like birds, so that's a shame because I really do like birds. I you go on. You do your third.
Okay, so since we're already talking about spoilers, there is a part near the end where Piranesi. So it's revealed that he is actually, he's basically somebody from the real world who's been trapped in this sort of hypnosis weird state where thinks he's in the house, or maybe he is in the house. Anyways, he realizes eventually that he's actually this other guy, and so he goes back to the real world, but there's this period of time where he's kind of not sure who he is. He's sort of in the middle. I thought that was an interesting part of the book. I think that identity struggle would have been more interesting if she had developed that more and spent more of the book on that. But even the little part that there was at the end, I did enjoy.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Mm-hmm. All right. I enjoy the mysticism. Not quite. So I think the book started really interesting, and I think part of that was, you get like this stuff about the birds communicate with Piranesi. Piranesi can read the birds, and you have the augury, you have Piranesi sort of communing with nature and so forth,
and dead people,
and dead people, and I think the way it's handled later, in a sense, that stuff becomes less important as the book goes on. And I think that's a real shame because I did think it was quite enchanting. I found the world a bit claustrophobic and I didn't think it was the most creative, but I thought there were times when the book was very enchanting near the start. And so I guess part of it, the coming to the real world that felt so disappointed was it felt disenchanting.
Mhm.
And I know, I have read essays online that say that's like part of the point.
Yeah.
And part of the point is like anti-romanticism or something, blah, blah, blah. And the world can't be re-enchanted, we've lost that, blah, blah, blah. But, it wasn't competent deep fiction. It wasn't competent literary fiction in my mind. But for a while, it was enchanting escapism. And so while that lasted, I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That just sounded like a coded critique. But okay, all right, got your fourth positive thing.
I don't know if I have any more.
Really?
I don't think I do.
Wow.
Sorry.
Okay. I'll give a fourth positive.
Okay.
Okay, a fourth positive. I like the capitalization.
Oh no!
I like, or I like the idea of the capitalization.
Okay.
So, for reference, every noun, basically every noun, or is capitalized. Or not every noun. Crisp packets aren't capitalized, but the sea, the stars, the moon, the sun is capitalized, and it's capturing this idea that the ancient people used to see the world as fundamentally alive, and so the different elements of nature are capitalized as if they are people, as if they are it's kind of pagan in a way, and I just thought that was really the cool in the idea, even if it was kind of irritating to read. I like when authors do things like that. So that's a fourth positive.
Okay.
Would you didn't like that? That'd be a negative, right?
But I guess that just shows how it can speak to different people in different ways.
Yeah. All right. Let's go on to what's your third? What was negative? Is there a negative?
I don't know if I have any more negatives either. I mean, I feel like I've probably ranted.
Made your.
Yeah.
All right.
Ranted a lot.
I can. Okay. Let me get another negative. Right. I think. I said I like the premise. I think the book's a bit unambitious. It does have this world, but it never does much with the world, and it never goes beyond. You've seen one description of statues, you've seen them all. I was hoping there'd be more to the world, like Piranesi would go somewhere and discover some new aspect or something, but there wasn't.
Yeah, I think it was almost. I was under the impression before we started it that there was going to be some of that, like he'd sort of find new rooms or something, or there'd be some more exploration of the house. But it was all like he does list all these different rooms he visits, but there's nothing particularly distinctive about them.
No, and yeah, but I will say another positive was that at the start there was a sense of peril in some of it, like when he's exploring the drown rooms and almost dies. And for a moment there, you're like, "Oh, there's going to be big in scale. Actually, like the decay in the house is going to be cool. He's going to explore it. There's going to be some interesting stuff." There wasn't, but once again, the book promised at the start to be good. So, do you have any more comments to add?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so the ending of the book. I mean, since we're just going into full spoiler territory, why not? This is more of an analysis than a review, in a sense.
That's fine. Go for it.
So, I think the message of the book, and correct me if you got different, but it's basically, you can live in a prison or a very limited space, but you can find the world to be beautiful because Piranesi, he finds the house to be beautiful even after he realizes it's a prison. And then he goes out into the real world and starts to see beauty in the world around him. Is that a fair?
I think we spoke about this the other day. I don't care to analyze it.
Yeah. I mean, no,
so whatever you say.
Okay. That was kind of the gist of the ending, like the good feelings you're supposed to leave with from the book, good. I think. Oh wait, you didn't read the ending, did you? Did you read the ending?
You read to a certain point, and then I read some essays about it and just
Okay.
found out about the ending. But
Yeah.
on the analysis thing, right, I think this is what we spoke about. Like, looking into it, there's a lot of symbolism in the statues and stuff. And it's nice that you finally think you got something from the book, but fundamentally, I was kind of bored and wasn't enjoying it, and I don't care to analyze something I didn't terribly enjoy.
Yeah.
It's not built enough
Enough goodwill.
goodwill with me to, yeah. So
Well, and about the ending, though, I mean, it really just reminded me of The Idiot by Dostoevsky, and I think The Idiot is a much better
yeah,
representation of that idea because The Idiot is about a man with like mental health struggles, and he comes back to Russia after being abroad for his health, and he's trying to see the good in the people around him and help people. And anyway,
Piranesi is Alyosha.
no, what's his name? Mishkin.
I know, but he's also Alyosha.
Well, yeah. It just, I just think Dostoevsky did a much better job
It's
exploring the same idea.
it's kind of unfair to hold Piranesi to Dostoevsky.
But yeah,
You know what book it reminded me of?
what?
We spoke about this. It reminded me of Blood Meridian.
Why?
Why? So I talked about it as boring to. Did we speak about this? So Blood Meridian is like a very different book, but one of the things that Blood Meridian does really well, and so this is it's tough on Piranesi because I love this in Blood Meridian, it does it so well, is that Blood Meridian is set in deserts and it's set in very desolate, repetitive, lifeless environments. But it describes it with it finds a great deal of beauty in those environments, describes a great deal of beauty, and really, really sells you on those. Piranesi kind of is trying to do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You're thrown into desolate, fairly lifeless, repetitive worlds. But whereas the prose in Blood Meridian is beautiful enough to show you, to really get across the beauty in the world, the prose in Piranesi is just not good enough. It's not creative enough. It doesn't find enough new creative ways to talk about these statues, and so it fails, and it's really dull. Which again is part of the ambition. I like the idea of the book. I like the idea that it's set in this kind of desolate, lifeless world. But Susanna Clarke just didn't pull it off.
Yeah. I think the last kind of literary reference that we'll end with here is, so Piranesi starts with a quote from The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis, and there are many references to The Magician's Nephew in this book. It's clearly trying to model itself off that book, at least in terms of symbols and even people. Like, Ketterly is a name, it's found in both novels. There's the faun from the faun from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe shows up in Piranesi as a statue. And there's also the same concept of traveling between worlds a little bit that Lewis does in Magician's Nephew. But it wears
its influences on its sleeve.
Yeah.
It's not made richer for it because you realise, wow, those are better books.
Yeah, that's the thing. The Magician's Nephew has well, it's one of my favorite Narnia books, along with The Silver Chair, but it has very well-developed characters, conflict, and, moral struggle, and this book just kind of doesn't really.
And on that note as well,
Yeah.
Its references aren't subtle. It does make references, like it's not pretending it's not influenced by The Magician's Nephew, but its references are like, oh, here's a statue of a faun. Like, they're not intelligent or subtle or particularly creative. They're like the very blunt.
Yeah.
They're the most obvious, least creative, dumb ways to present images to you, symbolism, because it's literally, here's a statue, this is a symbol, and the whole book is like that. As in, all the statues are like representative of stuff. I didn't get all the references, but that's the other thing. Like, you struggle with the meaning if you're not aware of exactly what it's referencing. You struggle with the meaning of the book. And then the references it has, though, aren't subtle. You either recognize it or you don't recognize it completely. And, whereas some books use symbolism, have a good message, but then symbolism elevates them, all the meaning in this book is kind of contained in how you read the symbols of the statue, right? I think that's just it's just very lazy. Is it lazy? Clumsy.
It might just be that she bit off more than she could chew. I mean, yeah.
That's probably a good way of discussing the book as a whole. Yeah, like there's big ambitions, but I wasn't sold. Do you rate things out of 10 on your channel? Do you give star ratings?
I do start ratings on Goodreads.
All right.
What was your star rating?
I'm obsessed with ratings, aren't I? I think it was a 3 out of 10.
Oh, out of 10.
Wait, out of 10? Yeah, I think it was a 3 out of 10.
Okay.
I had a miserable reading experience, actually.
Yeah, towards the end there, we were just kind of not wanting to even continue.
There's so many better books we own that we could be reading. What did you...
I think I gave it a 2 out of 5 on Goodreads.
So 4?
Yeah.
Alright, okay. Yeah.
Oh, I rated it higher. Huh. Okay.
Yeah. I just... The more I think about the book and talk about the book, the more I'm like, this is an awful book. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. I'm never going to read it again.
Yeah. I will say though, like, give it a try if it interests you. A lot of people have enjoyed it, and
that's fair.
Speak to different people.
Everyone else seems to think that it was amazing, but I still think this is why I said it came out in the pandemic when everyone was lonely, and there are strong vibes, and I imagine it will strike a strong chord with some people in the right circumstances. Yeah.
Well, I think we'll probably wrap it up here. But
we've spoken a long time.
We have. Yeah. But thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.